I was concluding my review of the final aspects of a crucial project at the office when my mobile phone buzzed. It was a call from Mark, a longtime friend. It was odd since he seldom calls during business hours. I answered cheerfully, hoping it was merely a light chat to relieve the stress of work. "Hi Mark, what's up?" I inquired, attempting to conceal the worry that was starting to show. "John, there's something I have to share with you. It's about Emily," he said reluctantly. My heart skipped a beat. What's the matter with Emily? Is everything all right with her? There was silence on the other end. Then Mark took a deep breath and continued. "Paul and I saw her entering a motel with another man. It felt like time froze. I felt as if the floor had vanished beneath me." "You must be wrong, Mark. Are you certain it was her?" "John, I wish I were mistaken, but we clearly saw her. She was with that man, Michael, my best friend." I felt a knot form in my gut, anger and sadness blending together, creating a whirlwind of emotions inside me. I thanked Mark for the call and disconnected, unsure of what to do next. For a moment, I was immobile, gazing into nothing. Then, impulsively, I grabbed my mobile phone and typed a message to Emily. "I know everything. The marriage is over." I sent it before I could reconsider. Minutes later, my mobile phone buzzed again. It was a text from Emily. "John, what are you talking about?" I don't understand. My fury grew. How could she act unaware? I typed another, more pointed message. "You and Michael, I know you're together. Don't come home." I set the mobile aside, attempting to steady my breathing. My head was filled with images and memories. Every shared moment, every vow, now felt deceitful. I rose from my chair and began to walk around the office, unable to focus on anything. Far away, I imagined Emily with Michael. I reflected on all the times I had confided in him, shared significant moments. Their betrayal was utterly unforeseen. As I attempted to make sense of the situation, my mobile rang again. It was Emily. Reluctantly, I answered. "John, can we please talk?" "It's not what you think," she pleaded. "Isn't it exactly what I think?" I responded in disbelief. "I know exactly what's happening." "You betrayed me, John. Listen to me, please," she started, but I cut her off. "There's nothing to listen to, Emily. You made your choice. The marriage is over." She began to cry on the other end, but I felt no sympathy. The hurt she caused was too profound. I hung up before she could continue and tossed the phone onto the table. I sat down once more, trying to regain my composure. Though anger still coursed through my veins, I knew I needed to think rationally. Had there been signs I overlooked recently, small details that now seemed glaring? As these thoughts surfaced, one thing was clear: my life would never be the same, and this story was far from concluded. He sat on the sofa in the living room, his head pulsing with a storm of thoughts. The message I had sent Emily was still on my phone, and anger simmered within me like a volcano ready to erupt. How could she betray me, betray us like this? I couldn't comprehend. I started to recall the past few months, every subtle hint I had ignored, every instance that now clicked in this heart-rending new context. I remembered when Emily began coming home later, always with an excuse ready. Teachers' meeting, she claimed, or school planning sessions initially. I took her word for it. Why wouldn't I? She was always so committed to her job, a model teacher. But gradually the tardiness increased and the excuses grew feeble. Last Friday, for instance, she came home with her hair slightly disheveled and a peculiar smile on her face. "Sorry I'm late, love." The meeting ran longer than expected, she said, trying to mask the anxiety in her voice. I wanted to believe her, but something deep inside me screamed that something was amiss. "It's okay. I was just worried," I replied, concealing the suspicion that was starting to build. Now, everything clicked. The revelation that she was with Michael, my best friend, felt like a blow to the stomach. Michael, of all people, I never thought he was capable of something like this. The sting of betrayal was excruciating. Suddenly, my mobile phone vibrated. It was a message from Emily. "John, please don't do anything rash. Let's talk," the message read. I felt a surge of anger and sadness reading that. How did she have the audacity to ask to talk after everything? I took a deep breath and replied, "Don't come home, Emily. I need some time to think across town." Emily was leaving the motel with Michael. She looked visibly distressed, her face pale and her eyes wide with panic. Michael tried to hold her arm, but she pulled away. "Emily, calm down. Let's figure this out together," he urged, trying to pacify her. "How can you say that, Michael? He knows everything. Don't you understand?" "Our world has crumbled," she responded, almost in tears. "Then let's leave. We can escape together, start anew somewhere else," Michael proposed, attempting to sound optimistic. But Emily shook her head, undecided. She was anxious about the consequences, about what would come next. "I don't know, Michael. I'm not sure if I'm ready for this," she said, her voice trembling. Emily realized that the decision she was about to make would alter their lives forever. She looked at Michael, searching for some confidence in his words, but everything felt uncertain. "I need to think. I need some time," she declared, finally moving away from him. Meanwhile, I was at home, trying to piece together my shattered heart. Every minor detail, every moment of suspicion returned to haunt me with excruciating clarity. Emily's message asking to talk only heightened my turmoil. How could she betray me like this? I sat on the couch, eyes glued to my mobile phone, hoping, perhaps, that a miraculous solution would appear. But all I felt was a profound void. The agony of betrayal, not just from Emily but also from Michael, was overwhelming. I realized nothing would ever be the same again. At that moment, I recognized that I had to make a choice, a decision that would forever change our lives. The day after receiving that devastating message, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions. I could barely concentrate, but I knew I had to find Michael, my best friend, and confront him. The notion that he, of all people, could be involved with Emily was simply insufferable. What pained me the most was the dual betrayal from the woman I loved and the friend I had blindly trusted. I drove to Michael's office, my heart pounding in my chest. He greeted me with a smile that quickly disappeared when he saw my expression. "John, what's going on? You look like a hurricane ready to demolish everything in its path," he remarked, attempting to keep the mood light. "Michael, we need to talk now," I demanded, my voice stern, leaving no room for evasions. He closed the office door and sat down, looking uneasy. "What's this about?" he inquired, but I could see in his eyes that he already knew. "You and Emily," I stated, feeling the anger and pain surge. "I know about you two." The ensuing silence was suffocating. Michael lowered his head, unable to face me. "John, I don't know what to say. I never wanted this to happen," he stammered. "You never wanted this to happen? How can you say that? You knew exactly what you were doing," I shouted, unable to control my fury. "You were my best friend, Michael. How could you betray my trust like this?" He tried to defend himself, stuttering. "John, I'm so sorry. It was a moment of weakness." Emily felt isolated, and so did I. "Is weakness all you have to offer?" I countered, my tone laced with disdain. "You wrecked my marriage, my existence, and all you managed to say is it was a fleeting lapse." Michael rose from his seat, finally facing me. "Look, John, I realize nothing I utter will rectify this. I admit I faltered, but please try to comprehend. We were a stray you lost in my home with my spouse while I was laboring to sustain us," I exclaimed, my voice quivering with fury. "I never wish to encounter you again, Michael." "Not ever," he remained mute, and I departed his office feeling as though a massive burden had been removed from my shoulders, yet an intense ache lingered. Upon returning home, I found Emily in the corridor, assembling her belongings. Her eyes, reddened from weeping, met mine. "John, please, can we converse?" she implored, her tone frail. "There's nothing to discuss, Emily. You made your decision," I responded icily. "I know I erred, but I cherish you, John. I never intended to wound you like this," she declared, tears cascading down her cheeks. "You call that love?" I retorted, tasting the bitterness in each syllable. "You betrayed me with my closest friend." "How dare you speak of love?" She approached, attempting to touch my arm, but I recoiled. "John, please let me elucidate. I felt so abandoned. You were invariably occupied, always remote. I didn't know how to connect with you anymore." "Don't attribute this to me, Emily. I was engaged in work for us, for our future," I stated, feeling the anger and sorrow intertwine once more. "I'm aware, and I'm remorseful, but please, don't expel me like this. We might manage to resolve this," she implored. "There's nothing to resolve." "Our marriage concluded the instant you chose to deceive me," I proclaimed, experiencing an odd relief as I spoke. She crumpled to the ground weeping. I turned away without a backward glance and left the house. I required air, space, time to assimilate all that had occurred. My world was shattered. But I knew I needed to devise a plan to reconstruct it. When Emily entered our house, her expression was laden with remorse and despair. I stood in the center of the living room, striving to remain composed, yet my heart throbbed uncontrollably. Betrayal was a venom spreading through my veins, enfeebling me gradually. "John, please hear me out," she began, her voice trembling. "Explain what?" "Emily," I snapped, my anger evident in every word. "Explain how you shattered our union, how you deceived and strayed with my best friend. What is there to clarify?" she advanced, her eyes tearful. "I felt so deserted, John. You were constantly absorbed in work, in your ventures. I required someone to notice me. So you opted to cope by being unfaithful with Michael, my best friend. I couldn't mask my disbelief. You never attempted to communicate, to tackle this jointly. Emily lowered her gaze, tears streaming. I tried, but you were always unavailable. Every time I wished to talk, you were in a meeting or engrossed in a project. I felt unseen. The sorrow in her eyes was evident, but I couldn't find sympathy. Unseen, yet she thought I hadn't felt the same. Did she not see that my relentless work was an attempt to maintain everything, to build a future for us? She could only shake her head, unable to reply. The atmosphere was thick with tension, each moment more oppressive than the last. Eventually, I took a deep breath and declared in the firmest tone I could muster, I've already consulted a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce immediately. Emily gasped, as if I had struck her physically. John, please don't do this. We can survive this. I recognize we erred, but we can attempt to rectify it. There's nothing left to mend, Emily, I responded icily. You have shattered our trust, and without that, no union can endure. She recoiled, as if my remarks had struck her physically. I'm departing, he murmured, his voice scarcely audible, but know that I never intended to hurt you, John. I still care for you. Watching her exit, weeping, felt like viewing a film in slow motion. Each tear of hers seemed to weigh tons on my heart, but I knew there was no returning. The betrayal was too profound to forgive. When the door shut behind Emily, the stillness in the house was overwhelming. I sat on the sofa, head in my hands, attempting to untangle everything: the visions of Emily and Michael together, the shattered trust, the unsure future. It all swirled into a whirlwind of emotions that seemed to choke me. Night fell, and yet I couldn't find solace. Emily's betrayal was an open sore, and I knew healing would take time, but at that moment, all I could do was breathe and tackle the agony day by day. Loneliness became a new companion, and the quiet in the house seemed to taunt my predicament. However, I was resolved to advance, even if it meant starting anew. Emily had chosen her path, and now it was my turn to choose mine. The days post-separation blurred into a fog of emotions. I felt like I was floating in dense mist, struggling to grasp anything solid. The once peaceful silence of the house now felt like a suffocating cage. Emily's absence was a resounding echo in the vacant corridors and disordered rooms. I decided to dive into work with a fervor that neared obsession. Designing buildings had always been a passion for me, a method to turn chaos into order, but now it was an escape. Yet, no matter how intensely I focused, memories of Emily haunted me. Every corner of the house, every item seemed imbued with recollections of our time together. One morning, while reviewing floor plans in my office, the phone rang. I hesitated upon seeing Emily's name on the display, but answered, hoping it concerned merely a practical query about the divorce. John, her voice trembled, and I could hear the pain and confusion in every word. I don't know where to start, but I need to speak with you, Emily. I've expressed all I needed to say. There's nothing left to discuss, I replied, trying to maintain a steady voice, though a lump formed in my throat. Please, just listen to me. It's regarding Michael. His name ignited my rage. What about him? I'm uninterested in anything related to him now. He betrayed me too, John, she revealed, startling me. A part of me felt slight satisfaction, knowing he had deceived her as well, but another part, a part still concerned for Emily, experienced pain in my heart. Are you telling me that Michael, the man for whom you wrecked our marriage, was also unfaithful to you? I asked, struggling to absorb the news. Yes, she replied, her voice cracking. I feel so foolish, so manipulated. You have no idea what it's like to discover that the person you trusted was also deceiving you. I believe I have an idea, I responded, unable to mask the bitterness in my voice. After a brief pause, she continued, John, I realize I made a grave mistake. I know I've hurt you in ways that can't be mended, but I need you to understand that no matter how far I stray, I will always regret what I did. Emily, regret doesn't alter what occurred. It doesn't diminish the pain, nor does it mend broken trust, I said. I'm trying to move forward, and you should too, she sighed on the other end of the call. I know, and I will. I just wanted you to know that despite everything, I never intended to hurt you. I ended the call, feeling a swirl of emotions. Despite my desire to resent her, part of me still cared, but I knew I had to proceed. Days later, while concentrating on a new project, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Emily, stating she needed to discuss something urgent. Reluctantly, I agreed to meet her at a cafe downtown. When I arrived, she was already there, looking anxious. John, thanks for coming. I've learned something about Michael that you should hear, Emily began. I don't want to hear anything more about him. Our relationship is done, and I want to move on, I interrupted. Please, just hear me out. This is significant. I found out Michael was using your confidential data to advance his own career. The revelation struck me hard. What do you mean? He used details from his projects to promote himself. I have evidence. I thought you should know, she explained. I sat silently, coming to terms with the double betrayal. Emily, if that's true, he's going to suffer the consequences, I said. She nodded, seeming relieved. I just wanted to do the right thing. I hope this helps you move forward. I left the cafe feeling a blend of anger and resolve. Emily had provided me with the means to expose Michael and ultimately close this painful chapter of my life. Back at home, I was attempting to focus on a new architectural design when my cell phone buzzed. The screen showed a message from Emily. We need to talk urgently. My heart quickened, and a mix of anger and curiosity overwhelmed me. What else could she possibly want after all that had transpired? Taking a deep breath, I replied, I'm home. You can come now. About half an hour later, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I saw Emily, her face showing a blend of desperation and determination. I let her in silently, and we sat on the sofa, facing each other in almost tangible silence. John, I know you don't want to see me, but this is important. It's about Michael, she started, her voice trembling. I don't want to hear anything more about him, I replied, trying to stay calm. He's already done enough damage. Please just listen to me, Emily insisted, her eyes shimmering with tears on the brink of falling. Michael was using your confidential information to advance his own career. I have proof that caught me off guard. What do you mean, using my information? She pulled a flash drive from her pocket and placed it on the table. I found this on his laptop. These are your project ideas you've shared with him over the years. He was stealing your work, John, and worse, he used this information to secure the promotion that should have been yours. I picked up the flash drive with trembling hands and connected it to my laptop. I opened the files and began reading. My heart sank as the reality unfolded before me. There were my projects, my ideas, all being presented as if they were Michael's. I can't believe this, I muttered, overwhelmed by a mixture of anger and betrayal. He was my best friend, I know, Emily said, her voice laden with regret, and that's why I needed to tell you. I know I betrayed you in many ways, but this is something you need to address. I took a deep breath, trying to process everything. Why are you telling me this now? What's in it for you? I gain nothing, she replied, the sincerity apparent in her gaze. I just couldn't let him get away with it. I already lost you, but I can't let him ruin your career too. I looked at her, recognizing the gravity of her words. Perhaps it was her final effort at making amends, a way to do something right after so much disorder. Thanks for telling me, I finally said, but that doesn't change anything between us. I know, she replied, lowering her head. We said our farewells in silence. After she left, I contacted my lawyer and explained the situation. He advised me to collect all the evidence and arrange a meeting with the company's management. 2 days later, I was in the boardroom with the directors, presenting the evidence against Michael. Their expressions shifted from surprise to indignation as I outlined the professional betrayal. This is unacceptable, said the Director General, rising from his seat. Michael will be terminated immediately, and we will pursue necessary legal actions. I felt a mix of relief and sadness. Michael, my best friend, had proven himself a betrayer in every respect, but at least now he would face the repercussions of his actions. When I left the meeting, I received a text from Emily. I hope everything went well. I wish you the best, I responded with a simple thank you. Despite everything, I knew I had to move on. Emily and I had reached emotional closure. Our lives would diverge, but at least this painful chapter of our story was closing. I walked to the park near the office and sat on a bench, watching the leaves fall from the trees. Perhaps it would be a new beginning for both of us, a tranquil start, even if we were apart.